What's going on, y'all? I know we play this game. It seems like every time we start, um, where people can't hear me, but let's see what we let's see what we can do. Um, what what do progressives and Democrats and so-called socially conservative Muslims have in common? One side is defined by secularism, cultural Marxism, and an ever expanding role of government. And the other is rooted in religious zealotry, traditional values, and a moral framework based on a ridiculous profit that is fundamentally incompatible with today's modern left. And this alliance should not work. It shouldn't. But there is a growing movement of Democrat, socialist aligned Muslim politicians gaining a lot of power within the Democrat Party. So what holds this coalition together? Has it evolved into something new, or is it an alliance that will eventually collapse under the weight of its own contradictions? We will discuss right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God is the standard and masculinity is not toxic. Today is Thursday, August 6th. Wow. It's already August. In the year of our Lord 2026, and we have a lot to get into, a lot. But real quick, before we get started, please hit like, subscribe, do all the algorithm things, share, comment. We look forward to hearing from you in the comment section. Help us to get away from this chokehold that the big tech tyrants have us in. And also over on the Mission Ready Men briefing individual YouTube channel outside of the SHR Media Network, please hit us up over there as well. We would love to have you. It's the same show, same content, just a different way to get access to it. And so if you haven't subscribed over there, please help us out and do that. Also, before we get started into some headlines and then what we really want to discuss. I'm asking for prayer warriors to lift up a really good friend of mine. His name is Tony. We've been friends since we were kids. And he's going through a bit of a health crisis right now. And he and his family desperately need your prayers. And if you know my story, you know that I'm living proof that prayer works. So if you would be so kind, please lift him up and pray for his family and pray for his complete healing in the name of Jesus. Everything else is a little less important after that, but there are some things that we want to get into. So let's get after it, shall we? Excuse me. First, there are a couple of headlines I came across just before we just before we came on, and it looks like Mitch McConnell has been discharged from his rehab facility. And I don't know if anybody's actually really seen him yet, but rumor has it he's still alive and he's been discharged. So I guess we will see him after the recess that they really shouldn't be taking, but that's a whole other story. And also, President Trump signed a couple of executive orders this afternoon. One of them banning birth tourism, and the other one is also a crackdown on the abuse of birthright citizenship. So I just came across this, just saw the story. I haven't really dug into it a whole lot yet, but that's something that we will, I'm sure we'll get into the next time we're together, probably on the weekend debrief. But those are some good things, and I'm hoping that they hold up in court, because the left is going to challenge them. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. All right. So something that we've talked about quite a bit in recent days, this red-green alliance. And the red-green alliance is the alliance that has formed between the socialists in the Democrat Party. I guess that was kind of redundant. And the Islamists, or as I like to refer to them as the jihadists. And people seem to take issue with my characterization on social media, but I do not care. So we just saw in the primary in Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed win the Democrat Senate primary. He was endorsed by all the left, Bernie Sanders, Mamdani, you name it, you pick a leftist, and they were behind behind El-Sayed. And this is a pattern among a lot of, pretty much all. I can't think of a Muslim that's not a Democrat, except for maybe Dr. Oz. I don't know. He doesn't really talk about his Islamic faith all that much. So I don't know if he's a practicing Muslim or if he's a cultural Muslim, like I've talked about before. I don't know. But he's the only one I can think of. But Star Parker had a column on Town Hall recently. And she talked about this red-green alliance that I've talked about. And she poses the question, she asked why Muslim politicians are overwhelmingly, uniformly, to use her word, Muslim. And she identifies some mismatches between Islam and Democrats. Islam's teachings on private property, theft, abortion, sexuality, religion, all of that runs counter to everything that the Democrat Party seems to be about. And I think I'm a fan of Star Parker. I've followed her for a while, and I think she's largely right in the conclusions that she reaches in this piece. She states that the Muslim politicians wear this Muslim identity and embrace it as a political brand and as a way to facilitate the transformation of America away from the principles that we were founded on, and also obviously opposing Israel. Muslims, and on social media, they seem to have a problem when I point this out as well. They hate Israel. They hate Israel. They are profoundly anti-Semitic. The people that they support, the animals that they support in Hamas and Hezbollah, have in their charter to get rid of, to wipe Israel off the map. And so it doesn't get any more anti-Semitic than that, in my opinion. And so if it were only that, I think her analysis here is largely correct, but a little incomplete. Because if the only issue were progressive policies or anti-Israel sentiment, then you would expect to see some alignment with Republicans and with the right on some issues. But that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at all. And I think there are a few reasons for that. And some of them she notes. Republicans are very patriotic. Conservatives are patriotic. We love America. Taqiyya, the principle of Taqiyya, the doctrine of Taqiyya, would allow Muslims to feign that patriotism. Conservatives largely, although there has been some movement on the woke right notwithstanding, but Republicans and conservatives largely support Israel. Taqiyya would cover them there as well. Republicans, conservatives do not support Palestine. All of that and everything else that she mentioned suggests that this is a purely political calculation. What I think she's missing is the trust gap. There's a trust deficit between conservatives and Muslims. And I think that is obvious. And they know it. Muslim political figures calculated correctly that the conservative movement view Islam as a threat and as antithetical to Western culture and Western civilization. And therefore, Muslims would never be embraced in that movement. Never. And people have been pointing out on social media that Republicans, conservatives never had a problem with Dr. Oz. That's not true. When President Trump appointed Dr. Oz, I was against it for this very reason. And as I mentioned, I don't know really what his, how he practices, if he practices. I know he's mentioned that he still is a Muslim. Is he a cultural Muslim? Does he practice? I don't know. But to me, that's irrelevant. Because if push comes to shove, and I've said this many times, if push comes to shove, cultural Muslims like Dr. Oz, if that's what he is, are not going to side with the West. They're not going to side with Christians or Jews. They're just not. And so there's absolutely no way that conservatives could embrace Muslim politicians in the way that they've been embraced by the Democrats. And so, and this goes in line with what I've said about rhinos. Republicans, there's very little difference between many establishment Republicans and Democrats, because they make the calculation that the district that they're in, it would be easier for them to run as a Republican rather than try to move to a Democrat district or try to run in their district as a Democrat. So they decide to run as Republicans, even though everything about them, their ideology, their principles, everything about them is Democrat. This is what the Muslims have done, which is why conservatives could never embrace on any type of scale a Muslim politician. I know I couldn't. I would never vote for one for all the reasons that I've just laid out. And this is something that has been in the forefront since 9/11. Now, there was a time pre 9/11 that some Muslims leaned Republican, leaned conservative. But since 9/11, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So the Democrat Party is the most rational home for these Muslims because it provides an identity politics infrastructure for them. They're viewed as they're minorities, so they get that minority status protection. They have large suicidal, empathetic donor networks that will treat them as a demographic category rather than a challenge to their doctrines as Democrats. And the same can't be said on the Republican side, on the conservative side. These coalitions allow Democrats or allow Muslims to run as leftists without having to contend with any of the obvious tensions and contradictions that are obvious to even the most casual observer. And the issue of Gaza and Israel, that is the glue that holds this thing together that would otherwise fall completely apart. Among other things, they hate Israel, they hate America, they hate the West. All of that serves as a way to hold this alliance together, despite all of the other issues. So I think that Star Parker's analysis in this piece is, as I said, largely correct. But make no mistake, this is a political calculation by the Muslim establishment. And when the Democrats are no longer useful to them, when they've taken over and they don't need any of it because they are now running everything, those Democrats that embraced Muslims in this suicidal empathy, they will be the first ones to go. They will be the absolute first ones to go. And anyone who's being honest with themselves knows this. And if you don't know this, then you're just not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. Because everything about the Democrats, except for their hatred of Israel and America and the West in general, everything about them is completely antithetical to how Muslims operate in this world. And so that begs the question, is there a world at all when where a conservative movement can have any type of successful working relationship with Muslims, with Muslim citizens, with Muslim politicians? Or is that trust deficit that's there between conservatives and Muslims, is that something that can be overcome? Or will this, what we're seeing, will this keep the Islamic politicians stuck in the Democrat Party until they overwhelm it and take it over? I think you know my position on that. I think it's quite obvious that there is absolutely no way that conservatives and Muslims or Islam could ever have this kind of political alliance. We'll see how long we'll see how long it lasts. I'm not sure how this is going to eventually end up, but it's it's not going to be good. It is not going to be good for the Democrats in the long run. We're going to continue this discussion on a slightly different tack. But before we do, I want to get a word in from our sponsor. And our sponsor for today's show is, where did it go? Our sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. And who you do business with matters. And that's why we switched to Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And they support the causes that we support. They support the causes that conservatives care about: pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom. So right now, if you switch to Patriot Mobile, you can get a free month of service when you go to patriotmobile.com and use promo code Jackson, or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Jackson. Stop funding these companies that hate your values, that fight against your values with everything they have. Switch to patriotmobile.com today. patriotmobile.com/Jackson. All right. We're going to continue along these lines, but we're going to get a little bit more specific. And we mentioned it at the top. Abdul El-Sayed, he won the Michigan primary. And he won it. He had been up quite a bit. It looked like it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to win. But then he went, once all the votes were tallied, he somehow beat her in a 1-point landslide. It was supposed to be a cakewalk. He was supposed to have no trouble. But nothing says inevitable progressive blue wave like barely scraping by while half the voters don't bother to show up. This let's take a look at this, because there are a lot of clips that we're gonna get into here. Let's take a look at this, because this is oh man, this was before everything, the final tallies run. But let's take a listen to this.
I want you to remind them that if we come through this, when we come through this, inshallah.
He's speaking Arabic. You've heard Muslims say that before, inshallah. That means in God's will. It's only going to get worse from here.
That will have taken $70 million on the chin and kept fighting back. I want you to remind them that if we come through.
He's talking about how Haley Stevens' campaign outspent him, spent $70 million and still lost. I'm not really sure. I mean, Haley Stevens, she kind of shot herself in the foot because there was just so much to make fun of her about. And then she addressed it and basically told people to stop making fun of her, which I don't think helped her cause. But Black voters in Michigan, rural voters, didn't get the memo that they were supposed to vote for the Islamo-communists. They didn't get the memo. And they preferred the goofy, they preferred the goofy establishment Democrat. And I'm I'm making fun of her a little bit, but I mean, on balance, she was much more likable than this guy who won. And it would have been an entertaining campaign had she won. And she has a better shot at beating Mike Rogers, which we'll get into here in a little bit. She has a better chance of beating Mike Rogers, or had a better chance of beating Mike Rogers in the general election. So we'll see what her future holds. But this guy, he was endorsed by Bernie Sanders, AOC, Zohran Mamdani, and like I said, he beat her by a single percentage point. The screenshot you saw where he with his initial victory speech, all the votes hadn't been counted yet, but it was I think 48.5 to 47.5%. So it's going to be interesting. Mike Rogers, he is now going to face this guy in the general election, and and he had some things to say. Oh yeah, let's take a look at this real quick. This is the final tally. And yeah, it looks like 48.5 to 47.5%. Mallory McMorrow, she got 4%. Why did she even bother? I think that was doomed from the start. But Mike Rogers, he is going to be El-Sayed's opponent, and he has some thoughts. So let's listen to this real quick.
If you woke up this morning thinking we're still California because Wayne County still doesn't have their vote count in, you may be right. Our election system here in Michigan is broken. We're going to do a lot of work between now and November to help get that thing at least back in some semblance of order. First of all, think about it. He just came out a few minutes ago and said that he won the race, so he's declaring victory. This is really about the heart and soul of our country. I have never seen someone so radical, so extreme, get nominated by a political party. And the DSA candidates in the state in 2 different congressional races look like they're pulling it off as well. The Democrat Party is lost. The Democrat Party is lost.
The Democrat Party is lost. And I think in this clip, Mike Rogers is going to go on to elaborate exactly as to why and how, but let's continue.
To this hardcore socialist attitude. And I fought terrorism my whole life. I was an FBI special agent, U.S. Army officer, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. I find it shocking that I'm going to go up against a guy who believes America deserved 9/11. That's why this race is so important, Lauren.
He believes America deserved 9/11. Now, he will deny that he believes that. Takia. He will deny it, but one of his main campaign surrogates, Hassan Piker, who we've talked about on this show before, has said emphatically that he believes America deserved 9/11. He has the front page of the New York Times from September 12th framed and hanging on his wall in his studio where he does his podcast from. Some people think that the Democrat Party and El-Sayed are basically cooked. I'd like to think that, but I'm old enough to remember some races that should have been won by Republicans or conservatives and didn't work out that way. And don't forget, Michigan is very largely Muslim. Just think of Dearborn. There's Dearborn, Michigan. I had a clip that I was going to play later, but let's just take a look at this. This is not some Middle Eastern country. This is Dearborn, Michigan. I mean, what is that? What is that? Besides all kinds of demonic. But that's enough of that. We don't have to play that whole thing. You get the idea, I think. Despite all of the red flags attendant to this guy, and the red flags are legion. Here's one. Here's one that should have basically disqualified him from the beginning, but it's Michigan and it's a Democrat Socialist of America. So let's take a look at that.
I also want to remind you guys that there are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I just don't want to comment on Khamenei at all. I don't think it's worth even touching that. They're going to try and, this is what we practice, but isn't Khamenei a bad guy? Isn't it great that he's dead? My first amendment was 86 years old. He was going to be dead sometime soon anyway.
He didn't want to comment on the death of Khamenei because people in his state are sad. He didn't want to alienate those people, so he didn't want to comment. And then there's this. This is one of his main campaign surrogates who happens to be best friends with Zohran Mamdani.
Being like Abdul has a ton of work to do mending bridges. Here's the take nuke for you, okay? You are all unbelievably Islamophobic pieces of shit, okay? You literally called the dude a terrorist for months on end and called him a sexist, misogynist terrorist.
He's friends with you. So what do you expect? He's friends with you, and you just described yourself, dude. But anyway, let's continue.
Bad candidate, doesn't fake doctor when he has like 2 degrees.
He has 2 degrees, but he hasn't passed the board. He's not licensed to practice medicine in Michigan or anywhere. So yeah, he is a fake doctor.
And now you're going to sit there and be like, well, you know, you really got to come to me now. Like, what are you talking about? Do you want to win or not? Lock the, okay? Lock the. And I do worry that there are some out there who, in an effort to make sure that that this narrative that a progressive can win in a state like Michigan doesn't take root, will literally either subtly or being like Abdul.
And this is the guy, and I'm not going to play it again, but this is the guy who said explicitly and forcefully that America deserved 9/11. He should be a pariah on the political stage. There should not be anyone who embraces this guy, yet here he is, prominently campaigning for Mamdani, for El-Sayed. And who knows who else he's going to be campaigning for as this campaign season ramps up. Yeah, I'm looking at some of the comments. Yes, Hassan is a Hamas supporter. He openly admits it. Yes. Bud Russell, this is what Joe Biden let in. Absolutely. I haven't heard that Michael, I haven't heard that Hassan Piker doesn't like black folks. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me given everything else that this guy has embraced. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And of course, the whole DSA thing notwithstanding, and all the ridiculous things that the DSA embraces. It's just a disaster for the state of Michigan. It's a disaster for the United States if this takes hold. Now, there are people who don't believe that that it will, and there's some polling, I guess, to suggest that that it won't. Harry Enton on CNN, he has done some polling, and we're going to take a look at that. And I want to believe that it's completely out of the question and that they're going to get smoked. I want to believe that. But again, I'm old enough to remember some of these races that conservatives, Republicans were supposed to win, and somehow, some way, it slipped away, or maybe taken away. But let's take a listen to what Harry Enton has to say.
Once El-Sayed became the favorite for that nomination, and now that he's actually become the nominee, Democratic chances have fallen dramatically. You can see it right here. Cast your prediction odds. Take a look here. Chance to win the Michigan Senate race. You go back to April at this point in the month. Dems had a 79% chance. Look how that number has fallen dramatically. Down we go into Lake Michigan. Now we're talking about just a 59% chance, while Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee, look at this, 21% chance, basically doubling, now up to a 41% chance. So the people who are putting their money.
Yeah, I mean, I put a little more stock in Kalshi and Poly Market, excuse me, because that's where the people are putting their money, like he was just about to say. And I think that is a somewhat better predictor than polling. But even Kalshi and Polymarket have been wrong. And I think perhaps they've been wrong because there were some shenanigans going on in the background that caused that to take place. And so I don't put anything past them. I'm going to be praying that he doesn't win. I encourage you all to pray that he doesn't win. Because the Democrats will cheat. They have been known to cheat. They will cheat. And they are desperate to win back, to get power back. And well, we'll see, but let's see what else he has to say.
Where their mouths are, quite skeptical at this point, or at least significantly more skeptical, that Democrats will be able to hold on to the Michigan Senate seat with El-Sayed as the nominee, though I still should note he is the slight favorite here. But given Michigan being a purple state and given where Trump's approval rating is, I think it's quite surprising that his numbers are not significantly higher.
Let's talk about where things broke down and what that means for the future. El-Sayed talks about, being the candidate for the working family, the working class. How did they vote for him?
This I think is the big problem, right? Democrats have been hemorrhaging working class voters, voters without a college education. El-Sayed comes in, the great promise of him, some populist message, I can connect with those voters. Well, in the primary, it didn't happen. Take a look here. Okay, counties El-Sayed won in the primary. 0 of 15. 0 of 15 with the lowest share of college degrees.
Which means it's the lowest share of people who have been brainwashed by the leftist academia. They didn't subject themselves to that brainwashing. They didn't subject themselves to that indoctrination. And so they know better.
Ergo, he did not win in those working class areas. Where he did win, he won 13 of the 15 counties with the highest share of college degrees. So you're thinking about Democrats having real...
With the highest share of brainwashed, socialist, indoctrinated automatons.
Trouble amongst the working class. El-Sayed came dramatically from those areas. In fact, not where there is working class folks, but where there are highly educated folks, more from elite circles than from the working class circles. And I think there's real worries among Democrats. Will that transfer over to the general election and El-Sayed continue to have the problems that prior Democrats have had with the working class?
You think?
So there's that. I mean, there's reason to be optimistic, obviously. And I mean, I am optimistic. I'm putting my faith in God that this will not happen. So we'll see. We'll see. At the end of the day, it's in God's hands regardless. But faith without works is dead, as I always say. So there's this unholy alliance between the left and Islam that, if not put in check, if not basically not even put in check, if not stopped in its tracks, this could be a disaster for the rest of us. President Trump, he weighed in on this before we get out of here. I wanted to show this. This was pretty funny. President Trump says, great news. He's optimistic about it. He says, great news for the Republican Party. El-Sayed, a communist loser who hates Jews and Israel, is a projected winner in this race with the socialists. As usual, the polls were way off in this one. She was not expected to do nearly as well as she did, and she wasn't. I think he's got that. No, I think he's got that a little mixed up. But regardless, now the Democrats' crazy policies will only get worse if we let it. So we'll see. Oh boy. this is going to be entertaining. This is going to be fun to watch for the next. This is going to be fun to watch for the next few months. Well, I do want to thank you all for being in the chat, and thank the moderators for keeping order in there. I love hearing from you. The chat does seem to be pretty lively tonight. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate all of the love and hate. But I do want to move on because I want to react to something else that happened on the Democrat side of the aisle. There is another, and this one was crazy to me. There is another Democrat DSA operative, DSA candidate, who did an interview where she said some pretty amazing things. And basically, she thinks that socialism is as American as apple pie. Absolutely ridiculous, I know. But this woman told Margaret Hoover on PBS that socialism is the most American thing ever. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this, because this is insane. But it's the DSA, so what do you expect?
New Jersey Democrat Josh Gottheimer recently said, I know you're smiling because you know the quote, said the DSA are not Democrats, they're socialists who want to hijack the Democratic Party. The Democrats have a big tent. That's our strength. We embrace a range of ideas, but there is no room for anti-American bomb throwers who oppose our ideas, values, and leaders. What's your response?
I don't think there's anything more American than subscribing to an economic philosophy that, as the evidence shows, is the only one that's actually capable of delivering things like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I really can't think of anything else.
Socialism has proven to deliver on the values of the Declaration of Independence more than capitalism has.
Yeah.
And she says it with such confidence. Nothing says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness quite like an economic system whose greatest accomplishments have been breadlines, gulags, empty shells. But yeah, let's say that this is the vision that the founders had when they signed the Declaration of Independence. That was just a rough draft that the DSA is now set to finish. Come on. It is amazing that these people actually allow this stuff to spill out of their faces. It's amazing. It's like they clearly don't know anything about history. They haven't cracked the history book. With all the information they have at their fingertips with their devices, they just don't bother. Insane. According to her, and this interview is on YouTube, and it's about 20 minutes long. Again, I encourage you to watch it. It's very informative. But according to her, capitalism doesn't get any credit. Doesn't get any credit for raising the standards of living among anyone. It's all down to the social programs that just appeared out of the ether after the free markets created all the wealth that was necessary in order to fund these social programs. But I digress. Who needs innovation and productivity and actual economic growth when you can just redistribute everything and call it economic freedom or justice? But there was another clip that she oh my goodness. As entertaining as some of these people can be, it's also astounding that and let's take a look at this next clip from her, because this is another one that's just insane.
When folks think of capitalism, I think they think of free markets and competition and, innovation. And
what do you think of?
I think of monopolies. I think of...
But that's not capitalism if it's a monopoly.
Well, and that's the question.
Now, I will give Margaret Hoover some credit here, because she does more in this interview to push back on some of this nonsense than you see from most journalists. And I've heard of Margaret Hoover, but she's on PBS. I don't watch PBS all that much. But she's doing a serviceable job, more so than, I don't know, Dana Bash or Jake Tapper, say. But anyway.
Right? Because in unfettered capitalism, it does end up leading to monopolies. Now, if there's no government intervention.
But since when have we had unfettered capitalism in this country?
Never. But we've always had a mixed economy. And that's part of the...
We've also never had unfettered socialism, right?
Exactly. So to make it super clear cut, I subscribe to this theory of donut economics. And in donut economics...
I have never heard this before. Let me know in the comments. Does this sound as ridiculous and silly to you as it does to me? But anyway, let's listen.
You have the inner ring of the donut, which is where everyone's basic needs are being met. And then the outer ring are the boundaries, so that you can make as much money as you want and do whatever you want with it, so long as you are not harming the planet, the one that we all have.
And who gets to determine that? Like, what metrics are being used and who develops them to say whether or not you're harming the planet?
Or that you're not exploiting others in order to earn that wealth, right? So if we had, companies like Apple that were paying every single worker a living wage, and they all had benefits, and they had a strong union, and they were able to participate in their working conditions and making those decisions as well. That's socialism.
But if Apple was the company that she just described, we would probably still be on the iPhone 3, because they wouldn't be able to afford to pay for any of the development of any of the advances that they've done. Now, I am not a fan of Apple by any means. I have never owned an iPhone, never will. I've never owned a Mac. In my career, in my IT career, I've supported Macs and supported iPhones, and I absolutely despise them. So, just an aside there. But anyway, we would be decades behind, or Apple would be decades behind, because they would have to, instead of paying for all the research and development that brings all these innovations and these advances to the market, they would have to pay all of their workers. And they wouldn't be able to afford that many. It just makes absolutely no sense. There's one other clip I want to show you guys before we move on to the next topic, and that is a reaction. Well, you know what? Let's just go ahead and watch it, and then we'll talk about it.
In June, President Trump said, "These are hardcore, godless communists. Mm-hmm. This is the most serious threat to our country since its existence."
The most serious threat from within? Absolutely. And he's absolutely right. They are godless because their God is themselves and the state.
So first, are you a communist?
No, I'm not a communist.
How do you tackle the criticism that some members of the DSA, including half of the DSA leadership, seem to call themselves communist?
Yeah, well, some members of the Democratic Party are proudly proclaiming themselves as capitalists, and it's a big tent, right? But again, at the end of the day, it's up to the voters, right? Until a self-proclaimed communist actually wins an election, then it's just noise from the Republican Party.
The problem with that analysis is that they are working very hard to get one of these leftist Democrat socialists to win one of these elections. And what's she going to say if we're unfortunate enough for that to happen? And I would contend that it has happened. Zohran Mamdani, he has said the goal is to seize the means of production. That's communism. I think I've actually played that clip on this show before. So she's just wrong. This is what we have to look forward to. This communism thing has actually been tried here before. The Pilgrims tried it. And it delivered nothing but famine and death. And it delivered it so efficiently that they had to change. They had to change and they switched to private ownership. And suddenly, as if by magic, people started to thrive. People started to be successful. But why look at 400 years worth of data when you've got the DSA to tell us what actually will work, even though they can't point to a single instance when communism, socialism has been tried and been successful. She said it's American, and it's so American that every place it's been tried and fully embraced, they had to build walls to keep people in. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. But yeah, let's elect these people. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? All right. Let's get away from this DSA nonsense for a minute. I want to talk about the thing that they say never happens, yet seems to happen quite often for something that we've been reliably told doesn't happen. there was a, where did it go? Well, it doesn't matter. They tell us when we talk about men and women's sports, they tell us when we talk about men using women's bathrooms and all that, they tell us that there are no documented cases of men pretending to be women hurting women or children in these spaces. They say that trans people, to the extent that they exist, and I'm just using their terminology here, are no more likely to be predators than anyone else. They insist that it just doesn't happen. Right up until the former New Hampshire state rep gets 33 years for soliciting nude photos of toddlers in a daycare. It's just isolated incidents that are statistically insignificant right up until a reality TV personality is charged with performing a sexual act on a minor in an Atlanta hotel, or a Philly activist who faces rape charges against young boys. A woman in the UK jailed for grooming a 13-year-old. But it never happens. It happens so rarely, it's not a big deal. Barry Lawton, who goes by the name of Stacey Marie, was arrested in 2023 and pled guilty to 3 counts of sexual exploitation of children. And he and his former partner, who worked at a daycare, he got him to take pictures of toddlers. And you can just imagine. Kendall Stevens in Philadelphia, charged with rape, indecent assault, unlawful contact with minors. Skylar Savage, these names, man. He was born a male and identifies as a female, arrested in 2023, pled guilty to sending sexual messages and images, including video of a sex act to children as young as 13. William Kelso Flournoy, someone born a man who identifies as a woman in Washington State, charged with first-degree rape of a child. This was just earlier this year. Ryan Haley, who goes by the name of Natalie Wolf, another dude pretending to be a woman, another mentally ill dude pretending to be a woman, convicted in 2025 of groping a 13-year-old's chest and attempting to touch her elsewhere. And the list just goes on. And this is just in the past 3 years. The oldest case I talked about just now was from 2023. But it never happens. Statistically insignificant, not a big deal. These people say that there are no people pretending to be the opposite sex predators worth discussing. But somehow that doesn't get updated when we see case after case after case where one of these people is sentenced for producing or receiving or engaging in this criminal, horrific activity. And then when you start listing off the number of arrests and convictions, crickets. Absolute crickets. They say they want to protect children, but yet they don't want to address any of this. I mean, I just listed off how many? 6, 7 incidents just in the past few years. But still, it's statistically insignificant. These are the same people who say, if it saves just one life, it's worth it. But that doesn't apply when it comes to the sexual exploitation of children. Why doesn't that same logic apply? If it saves just one child from this horrific trauma inflicted on them by these monsters, why wouldn't they want to do something about that? So they only want to protect children until the predator is one that identifies as someone of the opposite sex. And it's usually, obviously, the mentally ill dudes pretending to be women. There was another case that I was looking at earlier today. And it's a pretty popular one in famous one in LA. This dude, I believe he raped a woman, saw he was about to be convicted and decided he was going to identify as a woman with a full beard and a crew cut. And there was another one, another rapist, decided he wanted to be housed in a woman's prison, claimed to identify as a woman, and he just, at the state's expense, got quote unquote bottom surgery. They want us to ignore this stuff because they say it's not representative of the community as a whole, but the pattern keeps producing more and more mugshots, more and more victims of these predators, and they just, no big deal. No big deal at all. It's almost like they don't really care. I mean, what other explanation could there possibly be? If there is another one, I would love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. Tell me. Either they don't care or they think it's perfectly fine. And if they think it's perfectly fine, I mean, that would explain the attitude that they have about it. The idea that it never happens. How do you even respond to that when you can go to your favorite search engine, your favorite AI, and just ask the question, and you will just get a rolling scroll of these cases. But they say it never happens. It's just like the check is in the mail. Same energy. Same energy. They keep repeating this, but all you got to do is just the most casual of searches and just look at Look at the police blotters. Look, it's really insane. All right. Speaking of insane, and speaking of something else that the left just doesn't seem to want to acknowledge. Another day, another guy with a weapons cache and body armor casually monitoring the security of a golf course where President Trump is going to make an appearance. And from what I read, I didn't see it corroborated in, I read it in one spot, but I didn't see it corroborated. But from what I read, he tried to pass himself off as a member of President Trump's security detail. But how many of these have been stopped that we don't know about? I think this makes 5 that we've heard about, whether it was an actual attempt or an attempt that was thwarted. We got Butler. We got the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We got the golf course ambush. We got the Mar-a-Lago intruder. And now this. So what, 5? But again, not a big deal. Can't attribute this to the rhetoric of the left. Can't attribute this to them calling President Trump and conservatives Nazis and threats to democracy, and completely unrelated as far as they're concerned. And the American Pravda is trying to get us to believe that this guy was not really a credible threat to the community or to the president. Really? Really? This guy was a decorated Marine, served combat tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he had body armor, a short-barreled rifle, fake security credentials. But nah, not a threat. Not even a little bit. Now, I'd like to know, I haven't read how well done those fake security credentials were. And he's not talking, so I haven't seen any reporting about what he actually did in the military. Did he have access to somebody that could produce well done security credentials? Like what are we talking about here? But with years of this never-ending drone of threats to democracy and literally Hitler, and fascist and Nazi and communist, somehow people are shocked when another armed individual shows up and at a place where the president's going to be with fake State Department credentials, and nothing to see here, move along. Yeah, the rhetoric is of no consequence. The rhetoric has no downstream consequences at all. I do not believe in coincidence. And neither should you. Now, President Trump, he seems to be taking this all in stride. He said that only consequential presidents get this kind of treatment. And he's probably right. He's probably right. Of course, the left, they can't handle that kind of reaction from him. And it's actually kind of fun to watch their reactions to his reactions. It's not fun to watch the president be under such relentless threat, because there's still 2 years left. With the relentless push from some of these lunatics, you just have to pray a hedge of protection around the president. That's it. That's all you can really do. Because this relentless drumbeat, without that, I fear that one of these times will be successful, more successful than what happened in Butler. All right, let's we got a few minutes left, and I wanted to get into this, and as you all know, well, you may not know because I haven't really talked about it in a while, but I am a huge comic book nerd. I haven't read any comic books in a long time. I read tons of them when I was younger, even into my 20s. And my favorite hero of all time is Spider-Man. And with the recent success of Spider-Man, I mean, Blockbuster made over $1 billion in 7 days. Between that and some other shows and movies in recent times that have been wildly successful, the culture, Hollywood culture, the Hollywood elites have been, in my mind, systematically over the years trying to diminish heroes and heroism. Genuine heroism, where the characters choose to do the right thing or the difficult thing, the hard thing, at a personal cost. And the fact that Spider-Man has reached the heights that it has, that Reacher on Amazon, whatever your feelings about the star of the show, I get, but the content of the show, and then Top Gun a couple of years ago, shows that we still have an appetite for aspirational, heroic stories rather than cynicism and deconstruction like we see with that show, The Boys. But again, characters like Spider-Man and Superman and a host of others who choose sacrifice for a cause greater than themselves prove that despite Hollywood's best efforts, heroism and manhood is not dead. Hollywood and modern culture in general continue to try and neuter or diminish classic fictional heroes, like I mentioned, Superman, Spider-Man, Luke Skywalker, and Indiana Jones. I mean, Luke Skywalker, and Indiana Jones too, they were the hero's hero. And then in their most recent outings, Indiana Jones had to be rescued by a woman. And Luke Skywalker just gave up. They have been systematically trying to marginalize or reduce these. And I know these are fictional characters, but you get the point that I'm making. And they do the same thing with historical figures too. They do the same thing with our founders. Christopher Columbus. All of that they're trying to marginalize and accentuate their failings or flaws. And we're human. We all have them. But the modern Hollywood culture has deconstructed the traditional hero. Fictional, like I said, fictional ones and historical. And they don't offer any coherent alternative or replacement for it. It's just men are bad and manhood and heroism is dead. That's their message. Now, why am I getting into this? Heroism requires a moral hierarchy, an objective standard of goodness and morality that people can freely choose to embrace. And choosing to embrace it often will lead to having to make some kind of sacrifice. Heroes are not perfect. No one is perfect. Human beings are flawed individuals, but the hero does what's right despite the personal cost that to themselves. And reducing historical figures, especially, to their worst failings denies agency, and it flattens, reduces, diminishes the moral complexity of this life, and discourages the pursuit of any type of excellence or virtue. And as Christians, we have the perfect example of heroism in Jesus Christ. He is the definitive archetype hero. He left glory, he left heaven and entered this fallen, broken world that we live in, suffered, died, and brought restoration. But you have these leftist thinkers like Marx, who rejects the idea of objective truth and goodness. And because our modern society has embraced that, it makes genuine, non-ironic heroism almost impossible to sustain because there's no true north good worth sacrificing for. And so people can still choose to, and people should still choose to imitate Christ, the ultimate hero, by accepting responsibility, serving others, building strong families, and working to restore this brokenness. Even when the culture is producing this cynical, deconstructive drivel, we still have the Bible that we can look to for the ultimate story of heroism and redemption. And some people will say that the hero in these secular stories on some level are based on that. I don't know that I buy that particular explanation, but we have it. We can read it. We can embrace it ourselves, despite what the culture throws at us. All right, y'all. We only got about 3 minutes left, and so I think we're gonna end it there. I am Big E, and you've been watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network. And tonight, you can catch BZ in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon. The saloon is open. He will be on in about a half an hour from now, so be sure and check that out. As far as our other hosts, that is still up in the air right now. I'm not sure what the future holds there, but BZ and I are still holding it down. So be sure to check him out, and because I'm sure he's going to have a banger of a show tonight. But be sure to like, subscribe, share all of these great shows, and pray for us that we continue. We're still growing, despite the fact that it's just been BZ and I for a while. We're still growing. We're still reaching people. So thank you all for that. Please help us out and share these shows and share the channel, and help us to continue to reach as many people as we possibly can. But that is going to do it for this briefing. We're not here to just fill airtime, but we're here to equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. And if anything that we said here tonight resonated with you, please don't just watch, but share it. As we said before, share it. Bring another man into the fight. And if you want to wear what you stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and check out all of our designs that talk about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And while you're there, check out the SHR Media Shop, and check out all the merch from our hosts that we still have up there. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.